The Leading with Audacious Confidence podcast is brought to you by the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. What can I say about my conversation with Mary Jean? It was amazing. She's all about authentic leadership, especially with women and how we show up and finding the ways that we can lead in our feminine energy and power. We covered not just her work in nonprofit and then in banking and the way she saw women show up as leaders, but we also touched on biases, equality in the workplace, competition, masculine energy. We ran the gamut. And especially our conversation led into emotional intelligence. How are we learning to use that emotional intelligence productively? So I hope you enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback in the comments. Welcome to the Leading with Audacious Confidence podcast. Our mission for the show is to support leaders who are climbing that ladder of success with warnings, practical tips, and techniques from leadership experts to highlight not just what it takes to be a leader in this age, but in the process, build your confidence to show up more powerfully in your role. I'm your host, Alicia Couri, founder and CEO of Audacious Concepts, Inc., a boutique consulting firm providing audacious solutions to nagging and persistent people issues clogging the revenue pipeline of your organization. From optimizing talent to reducing conflict and improving communication, our brain science, people data tools, and expert coaching help you find the elegant solution to get the job done with more ease and less stress. Now, let's join in on the conversation. Well, welcome to another episode of Leading with Audacious Confidence. On the show today, we welcome our amazing guest with us today, Mary Jean Vignone. And let me tell you about Mary Jean. Dr. Mary Jean Vignone is an executive coach and consultant with an MBA, PhD, and over 25 years of leadership experience in nonprofits and corporations. She is passionate about helping women overcome their internal critics and self-doubt to reach their unlimited potential. She works with women clients who are transitioning or on track to transition to higher levels in their careers and assist them in developing their authentic leadership presence. Mary Jean also consults with CEOs and HR executives to develop their employees' talents to facilitate increased employee engagement and retention to support their employer's brand to attract new talent. Welcome to the show, Mary Jean.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I'm glad to be here.
So we've had a conversation before about female leaders. So you work with women specifically. And I want to go back to your own experience, first of all, in corporate and nonprofit as a woman leader and how that led you to the work that you're doing now. So what was your role back then and how did you find that women really need support?
I've had numerous roles, different roles in my career. First, I started with in the mortgage industry and working for Chase Manhattan at that time. And I kind of came up the ladder. You know, I started as a basically loan officer, then got promoted to a small office, managing an office, and then to marketing of the greater Los Angeles area, marketing officer in charge of that. Then also having the flagship office in downtown Los Angeles. So and then if you look at banking is a very kind of male-dominated organization, especially at the top levels. Mm-hmm. And working through that, I was very fortunate to be able to move through that. A lot of it was because of my way that I embraced my employees, understood who they were, and really tapped into their strengths and tried to be very authentic. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And what I found was I had some more problems with other women than I had with men. And that really got me to thinking about, okay, what is the dynamics here? So fast forward, jumped into a nonprofit role with Santa Barbara County's United Way, did fundraising, and had to interact with lots of different companies, lots of different people. And I started noticing again that there were some women who were really authentic, truly who they were, and there were others who were putting on this facade of being more masculine in their approach. And then coming into banking again, into a different role and more in the organizational development role, I again found that same thing. There are certain women that are not being who they are, and they want to be somebody else. They want to be like the men, and it doesn't work. And it really causes conflict. And it really is this competitive, let's push another woman down so I can look better. And I want to change that, because I think we as women coming in authentically who we are, we can make major changes in this world, in our society, in our companies, in the world in general.
I agree. So what do you think was behind some of that attitude? Do you think it was fear-based? Do you think it was they just didn't know better? What do you think as the expert, and having not just be the expert in it now, but having experienced it yourself?
I think what you really tapped on to is the fear that they weren't good enough, which is possible. The fear that they had to pretend to be somebody else. Now, we'll talk about the imposter syndrome a little bit later, which is a little different than trying to be somebody else that you're not. The imposter syndrome is more that you're questioning who you are, but
right, that you're not good enough. I'm not good enough, but this bravado and this having to put on, act like a man, be like the guys, be like one of the guys, be tough, be, dog eat dog. It was, that could be fear-based.
absolutely.
Because you feel like if I'm not like them, they're not going to accept me any other way, and they're going to push me out.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And also it's a competitive thing, because they're looking at the top leadership. There's only a handful of women. So it's like, oh, we have to compete with other women so we can get that little tiny piece up there.
Right.
It has to change.
It's not inclusive. It's all this fear, again, this scarcity mindset of there's only one position and it better be me.
Right.
There's no more room at the top. It's just, they're only letting one of us in. So the door is like this narrow. They're only letting, and I got wide hips. So how do I get in? I got to turn to the side.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm not enough. So I have to kind of push other women.
Push other women out of the way. And I have to squeeze myself in and be, And how, give me some examples of how this shows up, so that, because as people are listening, I want them to identify, oh my gosh, could this be me? Am I showing up this way? Or yes, this is such and such. And then we'll help you kind of be able to shift that or bring attention to it in a very kind and gentle way, if it's someone else, and you could bring attention to it without it being, without bringing offense or shame or guilt, or even being combative, or trying to approach someone with the wrong intention. So tell us how this can show up for people.
Well, when we talk about that, one person came to mind, a leader that I had that was not authentic, and that was part of the boys club. So she just worked her way in, kind of being the female, but the female boy, the whole boys club. So it's like that favoritism, it's like saying, okay, instead of looking at somebody's ability or what they can do, look at them like, oh, well, I like this person better because she's more like me, or I like that person because of this. And then just giving all the opportunities to a select few, building that kind of like loyalty that they feel they need to have, so that they have these people in their back pocket, so to speak. And and just really kind of speaking the talk, not just, like sometimes you have some corporate talk speak that comes in, and it's just saying the words.
It's like all empty.
It's
As
empty.
people say, there's nothing behind it. You don't mean it. Everybody knows you don't mean it. Like, we'll take care of you. No, we're not. No, we're not going to.
Exactly. Or like, we're very open here. Oh,
we're open to all your suggestions. No, the minute you bring a suggestion, you're fired. It's like maybe.
Yeah, you have it. You have it down pat.
It's like, you guys can take, take Friday off, but what you really mean is you better come in on Friday because we have a big thing due. But we're saying take Friday off. But those who do come in on Friday get a promotion or get treated differently come Monday. They're getting the better treatment, because even though you said take Friday off, you didn't really mean it. You said it because you were supposed to say it, kind of thing. So if you know what's good for you, show up on Friday.
Exactly. You have it down pat right there.
Yeah.
It's not being who you are. It's putting on this like air about something else, and so when you talk a lot about confidence,
right?
And I think the confidence we have should be authentic confidence.
Absolutely. It shouldn't be this bravado, this fake egotistical type of egotism, not confidence, really, because this can afflict everyone, male and female alike. This is not a woman's issue. We're focusing on women because you coach women, and it's about, because everyone could show up inauthentic, but because you coach women, we are talking about women. So please don't get us wrong in thinking that men don't show up that way too, because they sure do.
They do. They do.
In fact, they probably wrote the script. Since it was a man's world, right? Corporate was typically a man's world. And so women came in, I think when they started coming in, I remember the movie Mr. Mom, and she came in, and, it was the good old boys club, and you had to smoke cigars and drink and do all this stuff. And she came in being her authentic self. And, and at first it was not well received, but then realized, wait a second, she has her finger on the pulse of what women really want. And they were selling products to women. So we better listen to her. So I love that movie. I don't know if you know it, but I do.
Yeah, that really is. That's a totally an authentic woman coming in and being who she was.
Being who she is. Yeah, because it was supposed to be like focused on Michael Keaton's character, trying to be the housewife, trying to be Mr. Mom. But really, if you look at Terry Garr's character, if you really look at, I think the movie was really about her. when you look at corporate America and how women back then, this was in the 80s, it's still happening today, folks. How she was not well received at first because she was a woman, So what are some of when you're thinking about climbing that corporate ladder for women, what are some of the cautions when they're trying to stay authentic? What are some of the things that they need to be aware of to keep themselves authentic, but also strive to be in leadership?
Well, a lot of the whole thing about authentic leadership in general, and there's a whole theory around it. And I've been using an authentic leadership questionnaire in some of my research that I'm doing. But it's having that self-awareness, understanding who you are, understanding your emotions, understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses. Just know exactly who you are and feeling comfortable in your body and who you are. That's number one. Number two is to have values and live those values. to be ethical and moral and understanding, inclusive, and right, listening to others. That's part of that transparency of like really being who you are, not, and then it's not like you have to share every aspect of yourself, but you have to bring yourself into it. You have to show them you're a real person and that they can count on you and they know who you are. And you build that trust with that transparency. Then there's what's called balance processing. And that balance processing is all about listening to others, even though you don't agree with them, but giving them that space to really speak their mind and open up in a safe environment. And there's a lot that goes on with that psychological safe environment that we all need to work in. We don't want to feel threatened by in work. We don't want to feel anxious about work. We want to feel that we can be who we are. And the most important thing is an authentic leader is going to really help others to be authentic in their roles.
Yeah. You know, whenever I ask this kind of question, it always comes back to the individual first. That's always number one. Number one is always know yourself. In fact, I have seven secrets, and I call them step secrets. It's interchangeable to audacious confidence. And it starts with knowing yourself and loving yourself. And I always talk about the good, bad, and the ugly. You have to know it all. What are your blind? Because we have blind spots, people. We have blind spots that we don't know about ourselves that show up that everybody else sees. And you need to know what those things are. You can't be offended when somebody tells you about something about you just because you don't see it. That's a time to really listen and say, what is causing me to act this way or do something like this? And really question yourself, because if they're seeing it, other people are seeing it too. They're not the only ones that's seeing something in you. And so it's up to you, not up to them, because you have to take personal responsibility. It's not up to them to change that about you. It's up to you to recognize it, understand it. And then if you want to change it, then you can be a choice to change it. But if you keep saying, oh, no, that's not me, and you keep pushing it away, you're being a victim. You know, that's a victim mentality, and you'll never rise above it, because people will see some of those issues and situations, and they won't promote you because of a certain thing. And if you don't know it, if you're refusing to acknowledge it, it's not going to lead you to moving up or moving higher. So you need to know yourself, and you need to understand those things about yourself. So I love that. Values is important. Boundaries is important. Transparency, psychological safety, all of these things is really vital for you to understand in that process of moving forward and moving up. So I love that you're sharing that. What is your PhD on? What is
my PhD is on human and organizational systems or development.
Human development, organizational systems. So when we're talking about strengths, because that's like I love, diving into strengths of all types. I am an assessment junkie. I'm not going to lie. I love taking all kinds of assessments on learning more about me, because I feel like knowing yourself is so vital. Are there any particular types of assessment tools that you use or that you recommend, or something that you've created yourself?
I'm mostly, the assessment tools that I use was the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI.
Right.
Also the DISC as well. I also use, as I mentioned, the authentic leadership questionnaire. And I have another one called Management by Strengths that I also use. So I am just like you. And that I am a junkie too. I've taken Enneagram, which I'm not certified in, but I love that one. And also the Clifton Strengths, which is also a good one.
Loves Clifton Strengths. Yeah, so, because it's so vital, because there's so many different facets to us. So I laugh sometimes when leaders tell me, oh yeah, we do DISC. I'm like, okay, that's one measurement. That's just
Exactly.
one. There's so many other places because the measurement tools I use, the assessment tools I use, I'm certified in Colby, which is a cognitive assessment, and then I have predictive index, which is cognitive and affective. And so I want to look at all three parts of the mind and how they interact with each other, to look at, kind of get this view of a person from various different strengths, to see, okay, how is this conflicting with another person, and how is this kind of meshing with someone else? How do we get synergy even if we have diverse, because you want diversity, the diversity of strengths? How do we create this symphony and this harmony in the strengths? So I love that you're an assessment junkie like me, because it's so important. It's so important.
I also have the TKI, which is also looking at conflict, which I've used. And then also I love the EQI 2.0, the
emotional intelligence,
because that just covers so much, and it's really in depth, and people learn so much about themselves and how to kind of move forward, because it's something you can learn. It's not something you're just born with. You can learn emotional intelligence.
Yes. And you can learn about yourself, and the reason I bring up assessment tools in this conversation, because you're talking about developing authentic leadership. If you don't understand and you're trying to lead with different strengths that you see other leaders have, and you're trying to say, well, I want to lead like this person, but your strengths don't align with that person, you'll find yourself in a struggle. And you'll find yourself not being authentic, because you have to understand what your individual strengths are and how to best utilize those strengths to get where you want to go. So it's not about looking at, we can model other people's, career path and some of the things that they did, but when you understand your own strengths, it makes it so much easier for you to stay in your lane and not try to hop over into that lane and try to drive their path, but understand your own career path and how you can get there, because you might get there faster than them if you understand your strengths.
I agree. Strengths is so important, and it's also the essence of who you are. It's being who you are, bringing that whole self into your role. And when you have to try to imitate somebody else, it's imitation. It's people can see through that. I mean, we know others, and I'm sure you can recognize when somebody isn't being authentic.
Yes.
You can recognize when somebody is putting on a facade, putting on a face. It's obvious. And
everybody else can. They roll it. If someone says something in leadership and you see everybody else like, oh, yeah. They know.
They know. People know. You can't fool them.
You're not getting anything over on them. You're not getting anything over on them. Not at all. So the question I had about women now is, because strengths are non-gender. When we measure strengths, they're not gender biased, but you really get to understand how you operate. So how do you help women make that distinction between leading with their feminine energy and understanding their non-biased strengths and how to use them integratively to lead?
It's a good question, and it's not an easy answer.
Okay. I know.
I can't just like, oh, but one of the things that I do is really kind of understand the person that I'm working with. And especially when on a one-on-one coaching session, to really understand who they are. And sometimes I'll use some of the assessments so that they can get more self-awareness, but then try to bring their attention to what they want to be in the world, who they want to be, and what they're trying to achieve, and to kind of really focus around that and around the person, and then understand. Now, I think that we all, especially women, have some sort of, um, like you said, feminine power, that we have something there, feminine energy, feminine power. And during my research, I've been asking people that I'm interviewing, women that I'm interviewing, what is your feminine power?
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of different, and I haven't finished my research yet, so there's lots of different things that come out. But I'm also seeing a little bit of a trend in the early stages, and that women are talking about being open,
Mm-hmm.
being accepting, being welcoming, caring. So those are the qualities that and each one of these women went through the test, actually had people rate them on authenticity. So they came out as really authentic. And here's what they're saying. It's that kind of openness, it's that kind of welcome, it's the caring, it's the wanting to really understand their employees or the people.
Mm-hmm. Because as a mother, and I know not everybody's a mother, but women were created to be more nurturing. Like, I don't consider myself very nurturing. I don't think I'm very, that's my kids. When they're sick, it's like, don't call me. I'm not the coddler. I'm not the one. Right. But however, there is this innate sense to nurture, the sense to take care of, to want to, so like you said, that openness to want to help others. We have this as a woman, this innate sense, and men were created differently, especially, you know, when they were the hunter gatherers, they were created to go, get, kill the thing, bring it home. So in our prehistoric DNA, it's the woman was the gatherer and the nurturer, and the men were the hunters and the, you know. And so when a woman is trying to be that hunter, to be authentic, I'm not saying you can't have drive and ambition, but to be authentic, you also have to bring that nurturing side of you into it and not just shut it down, because it is a part of it is a part of our DNA. We have levels of nurturing. Like I said, I am not the, you know, when you're sick, coddle you. And no, I'm the one like, you're sick, let's get you healed. You know, let's figure out how to get rid of this thing. But I think the way I do it still has that nurturing quality to it, but which is different than a man. So when we're looking at authentic leadership presence in a woman, you have to bring all of you to this leadership role. Don't just say, well, I'm a mom, so that part of me has to stay home. Bring it with you, you know, bring all of it with you, because there might be just one little thing. Someone comes in and they're not feeling well that day. You can relate and not say, well, just suck it up, buttercup, let's go. You know, we got a deadline. You know, you can be more, oh, okay, what do you need? You know, how can we support you? And that to me is leading, bringing all of you, because you don't want to say, well, you know, I do that at home, I don't need to do this at work. That's not.
Yeah. I think the pandemic has kind of blurred those lines between home and work. So just, and in a good way, actually, I think, because now we're bringing people into our homes. So we're like sharing parts of ourselves in some ways, whether it be just what the background is, or, you know, other things, just sharing something about yourself. And it's that whole thing of being authentic and
being more compassionate.
More compassionate. And I also think that women are more attuned with if there's family issues. And let's face it, you know, pandemic, we had a lot of family issues going on, you know, and in the same room as the Zoom meeting.
Right. Kids are doing class while you're on Zoom and you have to pay attention to them and your work at the same time. Yep. And I think
we're attuned to that, to the needs.
And to your point too, the society has changed where a lot of us are taking care of parents, elderly parents now, and children. So we have both sides of the spectrum happening at the same time. And so when a worker comes and they say they have to take care of their parent, or something's happened to their parent, there is more compassion in leadership now that's saying, oh, wow, go handle that, go take care of that, because they're in the same boat too. So we're all kind of understand where we've bridged a gap of understanding, where it's no longer this very compartmentalized life that we're living. And that's a lot due to the pandemic. I think things are being blurred.
And the one thing that does worry me about the pandemic is that there's so many women who left the workplace that they could not. And I mean, I give a lot of credit. Luckily, my daughter's grown, so I didn't have that, having to take care of her and be on Zoom, and with learning and such. But I really give a lot of credit to the women who had to take care of the children, make sure that they're okay, make sure they're on Zoom, make sure that they're doing what they have to do, especially those with toddlers. I think that's got to be such a difficult thing to kind of balance everything. And then a lot of women had to make choices, and difficult choices, saying, I can't manage. I have to take care of my family, and have left the workplace. So I'm hoping as we come out of the pandemic, and we're still in it, unfortunately, to some degree, but that we can start getting those women back and getting them into leadership positions and getting them to be part of what they want to be in terms of their careers.
Because I want to talk about that a second. I have two questions that I want to ask you about that. So first of all, yes, the lion's share of the responsibilities and everything fell on women during the pandemic. We can't turn a blind eye to that. We can't sugarcoat that. It was devastating for women in companies, because there was a mass exodus of women when kids couldn't go back, they weren't opening schools. And women had to make the difficult decision of leave my job, take care of my kids. And so we did lose a lot of women leaders. How do you think, or what should companies do to help women kind of bridge that gap and start bringing more women back into the workforce, back into leadership? What is your opinion? Because, we don't have any specific answers. I just want to know, what, being someone who was in that world, what would you have done as a woman to help support other women to come back?
Well, the main thing is flexibility. The flexibility to work from home, the flexibility to maybe flex their hours if they need to take care of both the responsibilities of either an aging parent or children. So to really kind of give them that flexibility, more openness. And so there's a whole thing about some companies are demanding that employees come back into the office, and some companies are allowing the remote worker. And we've shown that the remote worker can do just as much, maybe even more sometimes.
If they don't have that long commute in traffic.
Exactly. They can be fresher, so it's a workable solution. It just has to, the companies have to be open to it. Mm-hmm. And then the whole thing about childcare, that's another major issue that needs to be addressed. And what is the responsibility of the workplace when it comes to childcare? Are some of the companies working towards having childcare on site? So, those are major issues that have to be addressed. And then making sure that people who have to take family leave are not penalized in their trajectory. A lot of companies, and they know that they can't do that legally.
legally. But again, like you said earlier, you're saying one thing, but what is really
Right,
happening over there?
exactly,
So we're not, because, this came to light during the pandemic too, is that, there's where the equity of saying, well, we'll have 7 a.m. stand-up meetings. Well, women, it's very difficult for women with children to be at a 7 a.m. stand-up meeting if they have to drop kids off to school or get them ready for school. Those are the times that you're getting the families in chaos in that morning, getting everybody together and getting them off to school. So why would you have a stand-up meeting at 7 a.m. and then penalize the person? Well, you're never showing up at our stand-up meeting, so what do you want us to do about that? It's like, don't have it at 7 a.m. Don't have it at 8 a.m. Don't have it at a time when they are corralling the troops to get them to school. Have it at a reasonable time that everybody can be available to be there. So there are certain policies and procedures that were created at a time when there weren't women or caregivers in the office that haven't been looked at or changed. So when you talked about values, you're looking at the person's values, but also what are the company's values, and does it align with both genders, or is it just really favoring one gender over the other? So that's as women get into leadership, you have to address these things, those systemic things.
Absolutely. It reminds me, back in my career, early part, we were looking at what do we do to train loan officers, and the men have come up with this great plan. We'll have a boot camp, and we'll put people in boot camp for 3 weeks and train them up and do all this. And at the time, I was a single mom, and it was like, I can't be gone for 3 weeks. That's just not and
just not going to work. Yeah.
I mentioned that. I said, that would not work for me. I was a top salesperson here, so you would not have me hired. And they really didn't care. And granted, that was a years ago, but I think it still exists today.
It still exists on some level. It still exists where the people on the top who are making these decisions don't have the voice of someone represented there to say, well, wait a second, hold on a minute. That's not going to work because you're excluding this whole, this whole area of people because they have to take care of their kids or they have to take care of a parent. So the second question I did want to ask you, I think this is kind of bridging into that, is do you believe that things are getting better for women or not really? It's kind of the same.
Well, when I think back in my early part of my career, and I'm probably older than you, so we're going way back, it's better. Mm-hmm. I remember when we weren't allowed to wear pantsuits to work because that was not appropriate. We had to wear skirts, which makes no sense. But anyway, so
because you had to look like a lady.
Yeah, because you have to look like a lady. So it's gotten better. But then, and I don't.
But progress has been slow.
I don't want to get into political stuff, but things are shifting again, and I'm not sure of if it's going to be better in the future.
Yeah, because we see some incremental progress, but then it's just not enough. It's just not enough.
The pandemic has really shown that.
Yeah.
With the discrepancy between men and women in terms of pay, in terms of responsibility, in terms of even opportunities. So hopefully we are moving in the right direction, and we just have to keep pushing forward in that right direction.
And that's why the work you do with women in leadership is so important to help them stand in their power, be recognized for the brilliance that they offer, and say, hey, hello, I deserve a shot just as much as anybody else here. That's very important. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, and then I have some rapid fire questions for you, is we touched on it before, is the imposter syndrome. Is like, building women up to believe that they do deserve to be there, that they have everything that it takes to be a leader, to be in the room, and not sit in the back of the room, not sit off to a corner, but sit at the front of the table. Do you still find that is a battle that you're working women through, this imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. It is. It still exists to this day. Men have it too.
Yep. Men have it too.
It's more likely that women will have it. One of my clients, when I first started working with her, she was unsure why she was even invited to sit to some of these meetings. She didn't feel she had a voice. And we really worked hard on that through the coaching process. And it was just her realizing that she had the degrees, she had a position, and it was like intelligent, incredible woman who wanted to make a major difference in the world and not feel like she had a voice.
I recognize that, because I used to feel that. I used to get invited where I was the only woman in a room full of white men. And I would sit there thinking, why am I here? What do they see? I have nothing to offer here. And I would always feel that way. And then one day I realized if I had nothing to offer, they wouldn't invite me into the room.
And that's a great awareness to have.
Right.
That's what we worked on. And so after quite a few months of working together, and she's still a client of mine, and I help her with different things. I mean, she now has a voice where she has been presenting her way of working, what her model to the state of California. So I'm just so proud of her, because she has that ability, and she always had it. It was just recognizing it, just internalizing it, just owning it.
That's it. Owning it. Because I used to say, wow, am I like supposed to be here to take notes? I'm like, am I like the secretary? Did they invite me here to take notes? I don't know.
Well, I do have to tell a little story about one of my research clients told me that she's a young woman in a very high position, and she was doing a presentation in this hotel, and the wait staff came in and stopped her because she had to sign the bill, and because they thought she was the secretary, and stopped her in the middle of her presentation. So that's that feeling out there is it's there, it's still there.
Yeah. So the imposter syndrome doesn't come out of nowhere, because it's kind of this societal, again, I'm going right back to Mr. Mom. She was treated at first like she was only there as window dressing, or the secretary, or, grab us a cup of coffee, go get us a drink, go fetch us this. So there's still that kind of impression. So you have to, like you said at the beginning, know yourself, know what you bring to the table, know your gifts, your skills, know all of that, know you're not, what the knowledge base that you're coming there with, and stand in your power and recognize that, hey, I am just as deserving of sitting here as anyone else. In fact, I have great ideas that need to be shared as well. And open your mouth and speak. Don't hold it all inside. Open your mouth and share those brilliant ideas that you have. So that's what I would say to women, because that's being audaciously confident.
I agree. And it's that understanding who you are and what you bring, and feeling really great about it.
Yay.
Confident in it. So I love the work that you're doing with the confidence.
So I am going to share some questions with you. Don't think too hard or long on it. But first of all, what is the biggest leadership mistake you've ever made or was a victim of?
I would think, what is leadership? It's hard to think of it offhand, but let me go through it. It probably, when I think about it, was jumping into some leadership roles without having anyone there to coach me, or really. So it was learning by fire,
Yeah.
So
you didn't have a mentor or somebody that you could talk to. It's just like,
I guess early in my career, I think one of the biggest things was being thrown into a leadership role, and because I did well in learning, how to be. At that time it was like a reservation agent for a travel company, so I knew my stuff. So they put me into a leadership role, but no training, no support. And I made mistakes left and right. And majority of the people I was managing were older than me because I was very young. And it was really
rough. I tell you, that seems to be a theme as I'm doing these interviews and these shows, is that companies aren't supporting their leaders when they promote them. They're saying, okay, there you go, figure it out. Or you should know. It's this idea that, oh, you're so good at this, so you should know what to do. We're not born with a playbook, already downloaded of how to do this. We need support.
That's I think is the most important thing, is that transition from an independent contributor to a manager. It's a big leap.
It's a big leap for a lot of people. And without the necessary upskilling, you end up with people leaving below managers because managers don't know what they're doing, or the managers leaving because they feel overwhelmed and that everybody hates them now. So you got to give them support. So the second question here is, what's the best leadership advice you ever got that you still implement today?
The best advice I ever got was, again, around emotional intelligence. Is using your emotional intelligence and learning about it, and then people saying, just do it.
Yes, very important. So here's a fun one. If you were a castaway on a deserted island, what 3 things would you hope washed ashore or was airdropped that you just couldn't live without? And one of them cannot be a cell phone.
Oh, well, I would definitely have to have books because I'm just a lifelong learner. So I need to have some books besides the food. Of course, food is an important thing as well. But I probably would not. I would love to have some wine.
Wine, food, and books. There you have it. The 3 necessities of life. Send me some grapes. Let me plant some grapes and create my own vineyard and learn to crush, learn to make some wine. Send me a book on winemaking. I'll make my own. So, if you were a song or a song title, what would it be and why?
Oh, I Am Woman.
I Am Woman. Hear me roar. That Carol Kane, Carol.
No, it was Helen Reddy.
Helen Reddy. That's right. Helen Reddy. I know that. And the final question I have is, since you talked about books so much, what are you reading now? Or you can ask that, or what are your top 3 favorite titles?
Oh, what I'm reading now is actually leader. It's a book about, I don't have the actual title, but it's a book about leadership presence, and it's embodied leadership presence. So it goes into not only the way that you speak, but also the way that you hold yourself in a leadership role.
I love that. I have a book on executive presence. but that sounds very different because I truly believe it has to be carried in the body. Just, like you, I think, and, we have a lot of similarities. That's why I enjoyed having you on the podcast. Anything that I did not ask you that you'd like to share in this final minute?
Well, I did mention, I just want to talk about my research because I'm so passionate about that.
Sure.
My research is around how women are authentic in their leadership roles. And that's why I'm interviewing women who are in leadership roles, giving them the authentic leadership questionnaire and then interviewing them. And I'm finding out these stories are incredible, from women that came from a really challenging childhood to women who have had challenges moving into their career, and how they have the courage and the self-awareness to really pull themselves through. And it's so exciting, and I feel honored to hear their stories.
Excellent. And I remember I have to connect you to some of those.
Oh, great.
Yes, I have to connect you to some of those women. So thank you so much, Mary Jean. We will have your, how people can connect with you. So if they are one of those women that are listening to this podcast and want to reach out and be part of your research, we'll have all the ways people can connect with you in the show notes. So thank you again for joining us on this episode of Leading with Audacious Confidence. I am your host, Alicia Couri, and I want to encourage you to lead yourself, lead your team, and lead your organization with audacious confidence. Until next time, bye.
Thank you.